Hi, boys and girls. It's been 5 days since we've been together. I miss you so much. So while I was sitting in our classroom all by myself working, I thought that today's video we could finish up our book, Humphrey. We have about 2 chapters left, so grab your parents, sit back, and enjoy the ending of The World According to Humphrey. So the last part of the book that we left off on was when Mrs. Thomas realized that the TV wasn't plugged in. The TV is unplugged. It's unplugged. Mr. Thomas came out from behind the TV, plug in hand, and a very puzzled look on his face. But it couldn't have just come unplugged while we were sitting there watching. I mean, a plug doesn't just fall out, he said. Plug it in, see if it works, his wife told him. Well, you guessed it. The TV came on as bright and loud as ever. I don't get it, Mr. Thomas muttered. But at least we don't have to pay to get it fixed. Mrs. Thomas stared at the screen for a few seconds, then glanced out the window at the kids playing happily outside. Charlie, what do you say we keep it unplugged for a couple more days? She asked. We just won't tell the kids. Mr. Thomas grinned. Then he bent down and unplugged the TV. Couldn't hurt, he said. He put down the broom and sat on the couch near his wife, and the two of them just sat there in the den, giggling like Stop Giggling Gale. Suddenly, Mr. Thomas looked over at me. You don't mind a little peace and quiet, do you, Humphrey? No, 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 I squeaked, and I promptly fell asleep. Things were a lot better when A.J., Garth, and I returned to room 26. No rubber bands flew through the air. Garth didn't trip anybody or make fun, and that meant Gail didn't get in trouble for giggling, and Heidi didn't get in trouble for speaking out with raising her hand because she was trying to tell Mrs. Brisbane what Garth had done. But the best change was Saye. She raised her hand every single day. One day she raised her hand to volunteer to stay in during recess to clean the chalkboard. Miranda raised her hand too. Mrs. Brisbane chose them both. Girls, I think I can trust you to stay here while I run this report down to the principal's office, Mrs. Brisbane told them. Of course she could trust them. Once the girls were alone, they began to talk. I really liked your singing, Miranda told Saye. Thanks. My mom and I are going to a musical version of Cinderella this weekend. We have an extra ticket. Would you like to come with us? My mom will pick you up. Saye quickly turned to face Miranda. Oh, yes, I've not been to a play before. Miranda grinned. Good, I'll have my mom call your mom. Suddenly, Saye's face fell. Now, boys and girls, you know that means her face didn't just fall off. But what do you think she's concerned about? You better not. She's so busy. Just give me your number and I'll have my father call your mother. Saye watched Miranda's reaction carefully. So did I. Cool. That was it. Miranda jotted down her number. Saye looked greatly relieved. I knew that Miranda's mother didn't care how well Saye's mother spoke English. Maybe now Saye would figure that out too. Another great thing happened. Mrs. Brisbane started reading books out loud to the class. Sometimes I would doze right in through those sessions, but this time she picked a really good book. When she announced that it was about a mouse, Gail giggled. What did she say? Art whispered to Richie. Pay attention, Art, Mrs. Brisbane said. It's about a mouse. Several of the boys groaned. Baby stuff, one of them muttered. We'll see, Mrs. Brisbane told them. She started to read, and oh, what a tale it was. All about mice no bigger than I am, who were great warriors. I was longing to put on some armor myself by the time she stopped reading. Continue tomorrow, she announced as she stuck her bookmark in place. Tomorrow? That woman truly has a mean streak. She's proved it again and again. I would have to sneak out of my cage at night to finish that book. But she's so mean, she stuck it in her desk drawer, the one that locks with a key. Grrr. The weekend came around quickly, and I went home with Richie. I'm still not quite sure how many people actually live at the Rinaldi's house because there are always so many people coming and going. Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, neighbors. One meal seemed to flow right through the next. I'll tell you one thing. You would never be lonely or hungry at the Rinaldi's house. On Sunday afternoon, guess who showed up? Remember Richie's uncle? That's right, Aldo Amato. This time, my buddy Aldo was not lonely because he brought along his girlfriend Maria to meet the family. She was a very nice lady who wore her long hair piled up high on her head. She was dressed in bright red from head to toe. Red earrings, red sweater, red skirt, red shoes. I think red is a very happy color. I think Maria is a very happy person, especially when she's with Aldo. All the Rinaldis made a big fuss over Maria and praised the bread and cookies she had brought from the bakery where she worked. After all the commotion died down, I heard Aldo tell Maria, "Now, there's someone really important I want you to meet." And he introduced her to me. Believe it or not, Humphrey is one of my best friends, he told her, and he was the very first friend I told about you. Well, then, I'm honored to meet you, Humphrey, Maria said. The pleasure's all mine, I squeaked. See, he likes you, said Aldo, and indeed I did. The world seemed like a pretty nice place for a handsome young hamster like me, I can tell you. I was sitting on top of the world when I returned to room 26 on Monday, but I just about toppled off when Mrs. Brisbane made an alarming announcement. Class, as you know, this will be a short week because of Thanksgiving, and that means Humphrey needs a home for 4 days instead of 2. Who wants to volunteer? Believe it or not one hand went up. I actually fell off my wheel. Mrs. Brisbane was surprised too. No one? Heidi, didn't you want to take Humphrey home? Oh, yes, but we're going to my grandma's house for Thanksgiving. Art? Yes, but we're having all relatives for Thanksgiving, and Mom said it wouldn't be a good time. And so it went. Every single classmate had big plans for Thanksgiving. Plans that didn't include an extra hamster. I was worried. I didn't want to spend 4 days alone in room 26. I worried all day Monday, all day Tuesday, and even more on Wednesday. And at the end of the day, Principal Morales stopped by to give Mrs. Brisbane an envelope. I think it was her paycheck, because she was especially glad to see him. I have a huge favor to ask, she said. Sure, Sue, what is it? He wore a tie with little turkeys all over it. Could you possibly take Humphrey for the weekend? I had my paws crossed that he'd say yes, but Principal Morales didn't even smile. Oh, Sue, I'd love to, but we're going out of town for the holiday. Another time I'd love to. Another time wouldn't matter. I needed a place to go now. After the principal left, Mrs. Brisbane sighed and gathered up her papers. Then she turned to me and said, Well, Humphrey, it looks like you're going home with me for Thanksgiving. My fate was sealed. I was going to the home of the woman who had once vowed to get rid of me for 4 whole days, and frankly, I was worried I would never come back. Tip number 12, if you must leave your hamster with a caretaker, make sure that it is someone you know and trust. All right, boys and girls, chapter 13 is called Thanks But No Thanks. Chapter 14 is called Hide and Go Squeak. And then chapter 15 is called Happy Hamster Day. And that will be our last chapter. So we have a few more chapters to go. Tune in tomorrow for our next chapter to find out what happens with Humphrey as he spends Thanksgiving with the teacher. Bye, guys.